Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. So today I am finally going to be doing my review on What Kind of Mother by Clay McLeod Chapman. If you've been on my channel before, you know I feel many ways about Clay McLeod Chapman's writing. He's one of those authors who, like, I don't necessarily care what he writes. I'm going to buy his books, not because I love his writing, but because I find him to be one of the most interesting horror authors of our time. Before this book, I'd only ever read 2 novels and 1 short story from him before. I read Whisper Down the Lane, which was like just kind of a fun, like satanic panic story set in the 80s. I really vibed with it. I thought it was fun. So I was very excited when last year he released Ghost Eaters, which was one of my most hated novels of last year, I would say. And hated's a strong word, but like I hated reading that book. It's another spar horror novel. I thought it was going to be really like supernatural, very much like akin between, very much a telling of like the thinning of the veil between this world and the world beyond. It was marketed as a story of like being able to speak to ghosts through eating magic mushrooms, which is whatever. It's something different. I'm not a big fan of spar horror. I've spoken about this a bunch on my channel. But I was intrigued to see where that story was gonna go, and I dragged my feet to get through that novel. That was so difficult for me to read. However, the metaphor of addiction in that story was so strong and so palpable that I can't ever discourage anybody from reading that book, because I think it has a lot of value in the context of what it was written for. I didn't love it. I didn't like it. I'm glad I read it, and after reading that and then reading his short story in the recently released October Screams, I was like, I think I get Clay McLeod Chapman. He has the ability to write something very compelling and fast-paced, but he also has the ability to really hone in on a specific topic and write about it in a very, very unique, curated eye. And I think that's what I like about him, even when I'm reading stuff that I don't like. So when I heard about What Kind of Mother, I was like, I'm going to read this. This is not a book that's plot really spoke to me. Just because I was kind of hesitant after having read Ghost Eaters, but I dove into it and I couldn't put this book down. I couldn't put this book down. This book is not at all about what I thought it was about. I'm going to read the inside flap, and then we're going to break down about how I have no idea what this book is about. After striking out on her own as a teen mom, Maddie Price is forced to return to her hometown of Brandywine, Virginia, with her 17-year-old daughter. With nothing to her name, she scrapes together a living as a palm reader at the local farmer's market. It's there that she connects with her old high school flame, Henry McCabe, now a reclusive local fisherman whose infant son Skylar went missing 5 years ago. Everyone in town is sure Skylar is dead, but when Maddie reads Henry's palm, she's haunted by strange and disturbing visions that suggest otherwise. As she follows the thread of these visions, Maddie discovers a terrifying nightmare waiting at the center of the labyrinth, and it's coming for everyone she holds dear. Combining supernatural horror with domestic suspense into a visceral exploration of parental grief, What Kind of Mother cements Clay McLeod Chapman's reputation as a star and the 21st century's Richard Matheson, which I don't think is a compliment because I don't like Richard Matheson, but I liked this book. But I don't think anything in the back of that book, or on the inside flap of that book, summarizes what this novel is about, because I was really expecting this book to be, in a very Anya Alborn sense, about the relationship between a mother and her daughter. The daughter does not need to exist in this book for this story to be told. And I found that actually really glaring, because my number one issue with this book is actually the very, very conclusion, which works had the daughter not existed. And the fact that the daughter does exist is what really drags this novel down for me. The conclusion of this book feels really misaligned with everything else that the story is telling. The story is more about the relationship between a father and his son, and the woes and trials and tribulations of coming into fatherhood and having your child taken away. I thought this book was written in a really unique fashion. His writing style is so compelling that I just kept wanting to know more and more and more about what was going on, because he sets up at the beginning a lot of likable characters in this kind of quirky, quaint town on the Chesapeake that's basically surrounded by like fishing culture. And I really, really loved the setting. I loved the introduction to all of the characters. But then to actually push the plot forward, pretty much the basis of everything laid out in front of our characters gets taken away. We get a lot of insight into who Maddie is that at the end didn't seem to matter. We get a lot of insight into who Henry is, who in the end didn't matter. They do a lot of... Chapman has a lot of backstory for these characters, and I think it's interesting how to further the plot, all of these kind of heartfelt love stories and stories of motherhood and endless unconditional love gets thrown out the window. And like I said, it's very jarring and it's very strange, but it pushes the plot forward because that is the essence of the horror in this novel. It is this idea of, is there something in the world that is thrust upon you that is more important and more valued than anything else? And what this book seems to say is a child to a parent. And again, that really, really works in the relationship between Henry and his son. Does not work at all with the relationship between Maddie and her daughter. So I almost wish this book was called What Kind of Father, because I felt like that would have been a stronger title and would have gone way more in sync with what this narrative actually is. There's a lot of body horror in this novel. There's a lot of body horror in this novel. There are a lot of crabs in this novel. There's a lot of sea creatures in this novel. I wasn't expecting this book to be this body horror forward and like needing a basic understanding of like sea wildlife, which Clay McLeod Chapman does a very, very, very good job of explaining. There's a lot of times where he just kind of seems to be going on a tangent explaining how like sea creatures work, and then like 20, 50 pages later, that explanation comes in handy for the understanding of the reader, because there's a lot of things I didn't get. I didn't know what a duck blind is. Again, I didn't really grow up in like a fishing town, so I had no idea what a duck blind was. I did look it up though. That was very helpful. Definitely look up like some of the more like nautical and fishing terms in this novel. It will help you out a lot, because even though Clay McLeod Chapman does try to explain a lot of things that might not be common knowledge to the reader, there are definitely a few things that he misses over. Again, lots and lots and lots of body horror. Lots of really just devastating scenes. This book does a really, really good job of paralleling like real life horror with supernatural horror. And the supernatural horror I really appreciated because it comes from this idea of mysticism and like, I think it's the concept of like reincarnation through emotions. It will get, Chapman explains it both inside the novel as well as later on in like his afterword. So for anybody who reads this book, it is like, where did this come from? It is from a certain type of belief, a lot of the concepts and horror in this novel. So I did appreciate the kind of nods and hints that Chapman gave us to where this idea came from, because it was not something that he just made up, which had it been something he just made up, I would have maybe felt a little bit wary on this concept. But the fact that it's something that is believed, I think is definitely interesting. But I have no idea what happened in this book. And this is why it's so hard for me to do this review, because I loved reading this. The actual, like, enjoyment I had from reading this book, just being so compelled to figure out what was going on, and just, like, the story between Henry and his wife is just beautiful and devastating and gut-wrenching, and could honestly be its own, like, romantic drama Oscar award-winning tale on its own. And then obviously you add in all of these horror elements at the conclusion, or the second half of the novel, and it just goes like completely off the rails and becomes a completely different story. But I will say that Chapman definitely had more of an elevated concept and more of an elevated voice in this novel than he did with Whisper Down the Lane. However, it was definitely more toned back and more relatable to the reader than it was with Ghost Eaters. I felt very compelled to keep reading this. Very interested in what was going on. Loved putting the clues together for the mystery. I thought it was really, really fun. And then when everything really just hits that climax and goes off the rails, it was consistently fun for me to still try and figure out what was going on. That being said, there are a lot of like conceptual plot holes. There are a lot of moments where the reader is really expected to have this suspension of disbelief to be able to connect what's happening and why. And this book left me with a lot of unanswered questions. And again, the presence of our main character having a daughter, I think, was a mistake. I think her storyline with her daughter was difficult for me to believe, just because the whole premise of somebody who has fought so hard for her daughter to have a good life, a successful life, a happy life, to then just willingly allow the daughter to go and move in with her father, who wanted nothing to do with her for the first like 15, 16 years of her life. I felt that was very strange. I don't think it was explained well enough, and I think that our main character from the beginning of the story kind of just wrote her daughter off. So I almost feel like the book would have benefited much, much more had that character not existed anymore. You know, maybe she had lost a daughter as well too, the way Henry did. Maybe that would have given it the impact it needed. But this idea of the daughter just moving to another neighborhood didn't hold the impact that our main character, Maddie, would have needed in order to have the visceral reaction that she does towards the end of the book. Because that, to me, is really what was so hard for me to believe, is this character who has been completely put on a pedestal as, like, the good mom, but with her own personal struggles, in comparison to, like, the grief-ridden father who is maybe not seeing things correctly. The fact that she kind of falls into his lane in the end just didn't click for me. I don't understand why she made the choice that she did. I did not enjoy the conclusion of this novel. But I really enjoyed reading it, and it was weird, and it was wacky, and it was, again, so much body horror that I wasn't expecting. And I'm not really sure what the metaphor was in this story. There's definitely this idea of parents learning to let go of their children. There's definitely this idea of grief in the wake of loss. However, unlike Ghost Eaters, where you could really see such core, concrete parallels of addiction, this one was a lot harder to navigate the waters. But I really liked it. So this was a 4-star read for me. This is not a book for everybody. This is definitely a book that the writing compels you to want to know what's going on more so than the actual story. Because the story is unanswered, the story is whimsical, the story is weird, and it's over the top. But it has these glimmers and moments and shining scenes where you're just like, oh my god, I need to keep understanding what's happening. I need to find out more about these characters. I need to see how everything unravels. But you don't necessarily get the satisfaction that you want at the end. But the actual journey to get there was bonkers, weird, fun, devastating, and so unique. This story was so unique. I feel like I've seen a lot of people do kind of cosmic horror with like crab creatures before, and crustaceans can be used very easily in horror. I've never seen anything quite like this before. I love the idea of this kind of creature who is present throughout the entire, or this kind of creature who is present, kind of having these like changeling-like tendencies, but also being so closely associated with the sea that you almost need that knowledge of how sea creatures live and survive and grow and evolve to fully understand what's happening. So yeah, this is a really weird one. And the cover's so great, because when I first saw this, I didn't even realize it was like like a crab trap with like crabs stuck inside of it. And I think the metaphor of a crab trap is a really, really good metaphor for where our two main characters, Henry and Maddie, feel in this novel. Oh, quick thing. Obviously, because this is a fishing story, there is definitely some animal cruelty. It wasn't anything that I couldn't read. It's all pretty brief. A dog is injured at one point, but that is the extent of what happens to the dog. And then there are other like farm animals and obviously sea creatures who are not as lucky. But it wasn't anything that I couldn't read, but it is there. So yeah, 4 stars. It really made me enjoy Chapman's writing. This is, again, a really, really weird one, and I suggest just being prepared for that when you go into it, and I think you'll really, really enjoy it. But definitely know you're not going to get all of the answers that you want, and as much as I was unsatisfied with the ending, it didn't take away from how much I enjoyed reading the novel. Anyways, that is all that I have for you guys today. As always, I try to post every Monday and Thursday, sometimes on Saturdays, and if you enjoyed these videos, please hit the like and subscribe buttons down below, and I will catch you all in the next one. Mwah!